Hi guys, welcome to an interesting video on Wild Rift. Today I've got a little bit something special, and it's a discussion I kind of wanted to have for quite some time now, which is what are the best combos in bot lane? And now what do I mean by the best combos in bot lane? What I mean by that is for each ADC, who is the best support to pair them with. So I'm going to do this to make things easier in the perspective of the ADC. Now I will acknowledge that some supports will probably not get put in the list. Some supports, like let's say Blitzcrank, probably won't find himself on the list. But yeah, we're gonna do it from the perspective of the ADC. So what it's gonna look like is, for example, I have Lucian. I'm gonna put the combo here. So Lucian pairs best with Braum, for example. I'm gonna explain the combo, why I think that is the case and why I think it's the best. And then after that, we'll move on to the next ADC, and then I will put whichever one I finish down here so I know who I've covered and who I've not. Now, before we get into it, just covering some admin matters, I guess you could say. Firstly, of course, this is all strictly my opinion, and you know, there are many ways to see it. So there are two ways that I'm mainly viewing it, which is either they have good synergy in lane, or they have good synergy for the entire game. Like, they just work well together, or sometimes it's because the support counters the ADC. So assuming you play in ranked, if you pair these two together, means the enemy is not gonna get the counter pick. So for example, Jhin and Nami. I'm gonna pair them up a little bit later. Nami counters Jhin because wherever Jhin is, Nami can ult and disrupt Jin's ultimate. So Nami counters Jhin. But they also work pretty well together. So I'm gonna pair them up as one of the best pairs that we have. So furthermore, another thing I'm gonna mention is that I will pair up every ADC with a support, but some ADCs, they don't work like particularly well with any support. So I'm just gonna put like the best option there, and as far as possible, I try to put like one or two options at most for the support role for each ADC, because I want to kind of just show what is the best, because really every ADC can work with every support. It's just how well they really work together. And of course, I don't even think this needs to be said, but I'm just going to put it out there, is that of course this doesn't take into account the enemy matchup in the lane. So of course, I can't really cover like this ADC versus this ADC and this support. You know, I can't say ADC A and with support A versus ADC B and support B. That would just take way too long, and it's way too hard to cover because there's so many variables. That would have like 1,000 combinations. But yeah, without further ado, let's just jump straight into the video. So I'm gonna go in order of the ADC. So of course, this is our ADC pool, and this is our support pool. So in alphabetical order, we're first gonna cover Akshan. So for Akshan, I believe the best support for him is Thresh. Now, why do I think that's the case? Akshan, his main point of damage is his E, so he's gonna have to swing in to actually deal damage. Now, what Thresh brings to the table is, firstly, if he hooks, it gets Akshan a free swing where he doesn't really have to panic. Secondly, when Akshan goes in, Thresh can go in with him to flay or to use the box or whatnot. And thirdly, which is probably the most important point, is that if Thresh doesn't actually go in with Akshan, and he just, lands a hook for Akshan to start going in, he can actually throw the lantern to Akshan, and Akshan can actually take the lantern out. Because sometimes as an Akshan, you swing into places that you don't really want to go, but you don't have a choice. If not, you don't actually deal damage. So Thresh can actually get you out of those situations. So I think that the best support for Akshan is actually Thresh. And now, before we go any further, I will say that there are a couple of supports that are in general very good. They are like Thresh, who pretty much brings everything to the table. Janna, which is probably the best peeling support and also has poke. Leona, which is probably the best lockdown support, which is why I kind of have them up in the front-ish support area. So now that we've covered Akshan, next we have Ashe. Now Ashe, actually, I believe that there are two supports that work very, very well with her. Now the first of which is Seraphine, and the other one is Braum. Now, why does Seraphine work very well with Ashe? They have very good synergy because Ashe's basic attacks actually applies a slow. And as we know, Seraphine's E, if she casts it onto slowed targets, they get rooted. If she casts it onto rooted targets, she gets stunned. So if she single casts E, assuming Ashe is already attacking the enemy, she gets an automatic root. If she wants to double cast it on an enemy that Ashe is attacking, it's an automatic stun. So just because of that synergy, it's amazing already. Secondly, Seraphine ult and Ashe ult can, bring a pretty nasty wombo combo. And thirdly, It's a pretty strong poke lane with Ashe W's and Seraphine Q's all together, so they just work very well together. Next we have Braum. So now with Braum, it's kind of a bit the same, where you just have a massive slow lane. So Ashe's basic attacks and her volley and all that slow. Braum's Q slows as well. Braum can apply his passive for a stun. His ult gives a knockup which can combo with Ashe's ult as well. And his ult also slows. So altogether it's just a lot of slows. And you'll be surprised that a lot of enemies just simply cannot deal with all the slows. And they'll just die because they underestimate Ashe and, you know, Braum together, and even just probably underestimate Ashe because she's likely the worst ADC in the game at the moment. But she can work really well with these two supports. Now, next on we move on to Corki, and now for Corki it's really clear cut. Corki's best combo is Leona. Now Corki is a very short range ADC, but he can have amazing damage output. Corki's main issue is firstly his small range and secondly his E. So you got to actually put your E onto the opponent for a reasonable amount of time in order to actually get the armor shred. Now who can lock down someone for Corki long enough? Leona. So Leona goes in with her E, locks the opponent down with her Q and her ult, and in the meantime Corki goes in as well, uses his E to just shred them, and in the meantime obviously casts Q, auto ultimate, you know, just so on and so forth, and together they just burst people even at like level 2 with Corki, Q and E, and Leona like Q and E as well. They just go all in and you can just die at level 2. So Corki and Leona is just the tried and tested combo. It's just the best for Corki is Leona. Now on to Draven. Now Draven is the first of, I think we have 3 ADCs that really, they don't actually have any support that works really well with them. And actually another one is our next ADC, which is Ezreal, and another one is, the third one is actually Kai'Sa. So the 3 of them really don't work particularly well with any support. Like, or rather a better way to put it is they work very well with every support. So there's no particular support that you really want to pair them up together with. Now for Draven, if I had to pick, I would pick either Rakan or Lulu. Now Rakan, because of the early game aggression, Rakan can easily knock people out, which gives the engaged Draven needs to go in with his axes, and that could net Draven an extra 1 or 2 auto attacks, which could lead to a kill and start the snowball. On the other hand, Lulu can just buff Draven up, like, especially in the later stages of the game, but also in the early stages of the game. She can just buff Draven up, you know, giving him attack speed, shields, everything, and Draven can be very, very hard to kill because of Lulu. So if I had to pick, I would pick these two to pair up with Draven. But honestly, when it comes to a Draven lane, it's mostly based on the skill of the Draven player itself and not so much which support you pair him with. Now on to Ezreal. I think Ezreal's, as I said, doesn't really have very good combos. But if I had to pick, I would probably put him with Janna, Nami, or Seraphine, all of which are enchanters. I don't think that tank supports work very well with Ezreal because he's sort of like a pokey champion, not a real all-in kind of champion. Of course, if, like, let's say a Leona goes in, he can, like, ult and, you know, WE for free and then start with the Qs. So that could work as well. But personally, I like these few just because of a few factors. Firstly, Ezreal is a poke lane, so this doubles up on the poke lane. Seraphine can poke, Janna can poke with W, Nami can poke with W as well, so you can double up on the poking. Secondly, Ezreal is a very safe laner. With Janna, he's even more safe because Janna's the best healing support. Nami can buff him up with heals and attacks as well. And both Nami and Seraphine can both actually make catches with the, like, bubble, the wave, or like the root or the ultimate as well. So you also have some kind of catch potential there. So I do believe that these 3 work very well with Ezreal. Now on to Jhin. Let's actually just put Jhin down here first. So on to Jhin. Jhin, I believe, works very well with a couple of picks actually. So first up, as I previously mentioned, Nami. So Nami, if you guys didn't know, if she buffs Jin's attacks with her E, it does actually synergize with his ultimate, so he can actually get more ult damage because of Nami. Aside from that, she has CC, and the main thing Jhin wants is CC. So the other picks are actually Leona and Lux. So the main thing Jhin wants is CC, because with CC, it guarantees he can hit his W, which is a very thin, like, laser. So He also has very high early game damage, so with CC he can get some early game kills, get the snowball rolling, and just become an unstoppable force. So Nami has CC, she can buff him up, and as I mentioned at the start of the video, she has the wave, which actually hard counters Jin, because even if you can't see Jin, you know where he is roughly, and the wave is pretty big, and Jin ult, tapers to a point where you know where he is, so you can just aim your ult in that rough direction, and then Nami's gonna cancel the Jin ult every single time. So Nami hard counters Jin as well, so it's best to just pair them up together. Leona, the best hard CC lockdown support. Of course, we know that Jin loves that. Easily can get off all his damage as well as land his W, so we love that. Lux, she has her binding, which allows you to land your W, and when Lux lands the binding, Jin lands the W. Jin auto attacks a couple of times, Lux lands her E at a higher amount of charge, and when Jin ults, Lux can also ult for long range snipes, so they just synergize pretty well. Now, after Jin is Jinx. So now I'm gonna get actually these two obvious ones out of the way. Jinx and Vayne. Obviously, they work best with Lulu, just because both of them kind of need to be buffed up by Lulu. Like, this is by far clearly the best pairing for Jinx and Lulu. Of course, they can work very well with other supports like Janna as well, but by far, like, Lulu is the best pairing for both of them, just because of how well she buffs both of them, and they kind of need Lulu's buff to actually even be really that good. So yeah. Now with Kai'Sa, as I said, she can work with any AD carry really. Like, she can work with enchanters, she can work with engaged tanks. So I'm just gonna put a couple of options you have here. Janna, we have Thresh, we have Leona, Nami. Like, she can really work with any support. Now really which support she works best with depends on the team comp. Like, if you have like for example, like we have a Lee Sin and a Kali, you kind of want Janna just to disrupt them. Thresh is kind of the best of both worlds. He has both engage and peel. Janna has peel. Nami has catch potential, buffing, and Leona has a lot of lockdown and catch potential. So really, it just depends on what the enemies have, and all four of them actually have a lot of CC, so that they can actually apply Kai'Sa's passive for her. All of them have AoE CC as well, like Nami's wave, Thresh's spray, Janna's like tornado and her ult as well, and Leona's solar flare. So they can actually proc Kai'Sa's passive for her. So yeah. Now Lucian, it's also very obvious. It's Braum. So reason is very obvious because when Braum applies his passive, Lucian has a double shot, so he can actually proc Braum's passive very very easily for very very good in lane CC. So in lane you should be winning the lane with a Braum Lucian combo. Of course, aside from that, Braum can also block stuff for Lucian, who is a very aggressive ADC who wants to just go in. Braum can follow him with his W and then block damage for him, and in the meantime he can proc Braum's passive. So it's just a very very obvious pairing for Lucian. Now MF also works very well with Seraphine, much for the same reasons that Ashe works very well with Seraphine, which is that when MF uses her E, Seraphine can use her E as well for an instant root without having to double cast. Aside from that, MF is a strong poke lane with her Q, which also synergizes with Seraphine's Q, which also can poke very well. Aside from that, if Seraphine hits a huge ult, it synergizes very well with MF ult, which wants to get people locked down AoE, like sort of like with any form of AoE lockdown, like Malphite ult, Cannon ult, Seraphine ult, some kind of huge AoE CC. So Seraphine just works very very well with Miss Fortune. Now with Senna, of course I'm talking about fasting Senna. So with her fasting, you actually have Bran, Galio, and Nasus. Now main reason for these three is that all three of them do very well with farm. Bran can get his damage items, Galio can either build like hybrid AP or tank, and Nasus can get his stacks, and most of the time he builds like AP. So all these three does very well with farm. Aside from that, Galio and Bran can actually farm very easily with their long range abilities, so they don't actually have to walk up to actually auto attack. Because I have actually tried like Senna with Leona, but it didn't really work too well just because of how she has to walk up, and she takes a lot of poke because of that when she tries to CS. So these three work very well with Senna. With Tristana just really wants a Leona. Now, with Leona's lockdown, Tristana can easily apply her bomb, put it at full charge, and just detonate the bomb. So it's a very obvious interaction there. Aside from that, somebody like Thresh could also work, because Thresh can go in together with Tristana and they can all in together. He also has a relatively good lockdown for Tristana to proc her bomb, so really these two work very well with Tristana, just so that she can get off her bomb. Varus is an interesting one. He is a very long range ADC, so he kind of really wants a Janna. Now why is this the case? Because you are very immobile, so being very long range, really no support can even match your poke. Of course he can kind of work well with poke supports like Seraphine for example, but he works very well with Janna just because if any enemy gets onto you, Janna can peel them off with her tornado, shield you with her E, and just push them away from ultimate. You basically just don't want anybody to get on you, especially if the enemy team has somebody like a Lee Sin, a Katarina, any just assassin or any backline diver, maybe a Camille, like anybody who wants to get onto you, Janna's job is to just get them away from you, and in the meantime you can just deal your damage with your poke or whatever else depending on what kind of build you're going on Varus. Now, it's kind of the same story with Ziggs, so I'm just going to do this first. Ziggs kind of also works very well with Janna because you just want people to get off you because you're a long-range poker. And our last one, Xayah. Now, Xayah, I don't think that this really needs to be mentioned. Obviously, she works the best with Rakan. They have very good synergy. There's a reason why, they are meant to be together. So they have very good chain CC with like Rakan, knock up into Xayah root. Of course, we have all the added benefits like Rakan's shield onto Xayah, Xayah's attack speed on Rakan, which gives them very strong like early levels. But aside from Rakan, actually there is also someone else that works very well with Xayah. Now, that is Braum. Now, this is for actually a couple of reasons. The first reason is that Braum actually kind of hard counters Xayah. Reason for that is that when Xayah wants to get her feathers on the ground, if Braum puts up his shield, the feathers actually will drop in front of Braum. So you can't actually get the feathers behind Braum or behind Braum's ADC lane partner for that matter. So it kind of hard counters Xayah. So of course you want to pick Braum with Xayah to prevent yourself from getting hard countered. But aside from that, they actually work pretty well together because when Braum actually hits his Q and to try to like proc his passive, you can actually proc the passive with your auto attacks easily, especially when you press W for the attack speed. And after you proc his passive, you would have gotten a couple of feathers behind. After proccing the passive, you can auto attack maybe once or twice more to get like 1 to 2 more feathers behind, and you can actually pull the feathers back to chain CC with his passive, so it works very, very well. And of course, Xayah being a very safe kind of ADC works even better with Braum, because Braum gives Xayah another layer of safety with his shield. So really, Xayah and Braum work very, very well together, despite Braum countering Xayah in the opposite matchup. So with that, I managed to cover every single best support for every single ADC, aka what I like to call the best bot lane combos. So this is probably gonna be like a one-off kind of thing. Like I may update it in like the future, but this is when we have like more ADCs and more supports. But more or less, this is what it is for now. So thank you guys for watching the video, and goodbye.